The rain had been tapping against our apartment windows since before dawn, a soft, persistent rhythm that blurred the world outside into streaks of gray and silver. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun lazily, counting the rotations like they might reveal something I'd been avoiding. Mornings used to feel simple. Coffee, a quick shower, a rushed goodbye. Now they felt loaded, like every quiet moment held a question I wasn't ready to ask. The apartment wasn't big, just 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, and a living room that smelled faintly of old books and the citrus cleaner he always used. He, being my roommate, Alex. We'd met 6 months ago through a housing post that promised no drama, shared rent, and mutual respect. It was almost funny now, how naive that sounded. I could hear him in the kitchen, cabinets opening and closing, the kettle's whistle rising and falling. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Still, my chest tightened with each one. I rolled onto my side and watched the thin line of light beneath my door, wondering if he was dressed yet, if he'd slept well, if he'd noticed the way I'd lingered too long in the hallway last night when we'd brushed past each other. My mind replayed that moment like a scratched record, his shoulder against mine, the sudden intake of breath, the way neither of us had spoken. Get it together, I whispered to myself. When I finally stepped into the hallway, the air felt warmer, heavier. Alex stood by the counter, back turned, stirring something in a chipped mug. He wore one of my old hoodies again. I'd never told him it was mine, but seeing him in it did something to me I couldn't explain. "Morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder, his smile quick and easy like always. "Morning," I replied, hoping my voice didn't give me away. We moved around each other in practiced silence, passing the sugar, the milk, our hands almost touching every time. The rain outside grew louder, drumming against the fire escape like it was trying to get in. I found myself staring at the small scar on his knuckle, wondering how it got there, wondering why I cared. There was a knock at the door. Sharp, unexpected. Alex froze. So did I. We exchanged a look, curiosity mixed with something else, something closer to unease. Nobody ever visited this early. My heart thudded as I crossed the room, every step feeling heavier than the last. The knock came again, louder this time. I reached for the handle and paused, my reflection staring back at me in the dull metal. What was about to walk into our quiet, rain-soaked morning? And why did I have the sudden, sinking feeling that whatever it was, nothing between Alex and me would feel simple again afterward? The door stayed closed. That was the first strange thing. I stood there with my hand still hovering inches from the handle, listening to the rain and my own breathing, waiting for another knock that didn't come. Alex shifted behind me, the floorboard creaking under his weight. "Maybe they left," he said, trying to sound casual. "Maybe," I echoed, though something in my gut told me that wasn't true. I opened the door slowly. The hallway outside was empty, the yellow light flickering like it always did when the building's wiring acted up. But on the floor, right in front of our door, sat a small, plain envelope. No name, no return address, just paper, slightly damp at the edges from the humidity in the air. Alex leaned past me to see it. "That's weird." I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. It felt heavier than it looked. Inside was a folded piece of paper. My name written across the top in handwriting I didn't recognize. My chest tightened. I glanced at Alex, then back at the note. "It's for me." His eyebrows lifted. "You expecting secret admirers now?" I tried to smile, but it came out thin. "Hardly." I unfolded the paper. "You don't know him the way you think you do." That was it. No signature, no explanation, just that single, unsettling line. Alex let out a low whistle. "That's not creepy at all." I read it again, my mind racing through every possible person who could have written it. An old friend, a bitter ex, someone playing a joke. None of it made sense. "Who's him?" Alex asked. I shook my head. "I have no idea." But even as I said it, my eyes drifted to him. The room felt smaller after that. The walls closer, the air thicker. We tried to go back to our routine, coffee, toast, the news murmuring from Alex's phone on the counter, but everything felt off, like a song played just slightly out of tune. My thoughts kept circling back to the note, to that one line that refused to leave me alone. Alex noticed. Of course he did. You're quiet, he said, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. That thing got under your skin, huh? Wouldn't it get under yours? He shrugged, but his eyes stayed on me a second longer than usual. I guess. But people don't usually slip notes under doors for no reason. I laughed softly. That's exactly what I'm worried about. He watched me for a moment, like he was deciding whether to say something. Then he turned back to his mug. The day crept forward in slow, uneasy steps. We both had the morning off, which usually meant lazy hours on the couch, some dumb show playing in the background, comfortable silence between us. That day, though, the silence felt loaded. Every glance, every small movement seemed to carry weight. Alex sprawled at one end of the couch, scrolling through his phone. I sat at the other, pretending to read a book I hadn't turned the page of in 10 minutes. The rain had eased into a soft drizzle, the kind that made the world outside feel distant and unreal. Hey, he said suddenly. Yeah, do you ever feel like this place listens? He gestured vaguely at the walls. I frowned. Listens. Yeah, like it remembers things. He smirked, clearly half joking, but there was something in his eyes that made my stomach flip. You're being dramatic, am I? He sat up a little, resting his elbows on his knees. I don't know. This building's old. Lots of people come and go. Feels like it's seen stuff. I thought about the note again, about how it had appeared out of nowhere. Maybe, I said quietly. The afternoon light shifted, shadows crawling across the floor. At some point, Alex got up to make more coffee. I watched him move around the kitchen, the familiar motions, the way he pushed his hair back when it fell into his eyes. It hit me then, hard and uninvited, how much of my day revolved around noticing him. I hated myself a little for it. He caught me staring. What? Nothing, I said too quickly. He tilted his head, studying me. You sure? I nodded. Just tired. He didn't look convinced, but he let it go. Later, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from an unknown number. Did you get the note? My heart jumped into my throat. I stood up so fast the couch creaked. Alex, I said, my voice low. He looked up, instantly alert. What's wrong? I showed him the screen. He read it, his jaw tightening. Okay, that's not funny anymore. I typed back before I could overthink it. Who is this? The 3 little dots appeared almost immediately. Someone who knows what he won't tell you. I swallowed. Tell me you didn't just text them back, Alex said. I did. Why would you do that? Because I want to know what this is about. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing a step or two across the room. This is messed up. Could be some creep. Then ask him about last summer. The message came through. I felt dizzy. Ask who? Alex demanded. I hesitated. It just says, him. Alex stopped pacing. What about last summer? I looked at him. Really looked at him. The easy smile, the relaxed posture, the way he always seemed so open. I don't know, I said. The phone buzzed again. He thinks you don't remember. He's wrong. My mind flashed back to last summer, late nights, a different city, a different version of myself. A memory surfaced, half buried, of a bar filled with music and sweat and laughter. Of eyes meeting across a crowded room. My breath caught. Alex, I said slowly, where were you last summer? He frowned. What kind of question is that? Just answer it. He hesitated. Just for a second. Here, he said. Working. Same as always. The phone buzzed. Liar. I felt cold. Alex saw my face change. What did it say? I shook my head. Nothing. He stepped closer. Don't do that. You're freaking me out. I backed away without meaning to. This is weird. Someone's messing with us. Or messing with you, he shot back. The air between us felt charged, like a storm about to break. I looked down at the phone again. You deserve the truth, even if he doesn't want you to have it. My hands were shaking now. Alex, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, is there something you're not telling me? He stared at me, his expression unreadable. The easy confidence he usually wore was gone, replaced by something tighter, more guarded. What do you think I'm hiding? He asked. I didn't have an answer. Just a feeling, a knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. The rain started again outside, harder this time, pounding against the windows like a warning. My phone buzzed one last time. Look in his room. I looked up at Alex. He was already watching me, like he knew. And in that moment, standing in the middle of our small, familiar living room, I realized something had shifted between us, something I wasn't sure we could ever put back the way it was. Why would someone tell me to look in your room? I asked. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. Maybe because they know what you'll find. I stood there, the phone still glowing in my hand, the words "look in his room" burning into my eyes. The hallway behind Alex felt darker than it should have, the light at the far end flickering like it was losing the will to stay on. Say something, I whispered. Alex swallowed. I could see it in the way his throat moved, the way his shoulders tensed like he was bracing for impact. This is ridiculous, he said, but there was no conviction behind it. Someone's messing with you, with us. Then why won't you just tell me what they're talking about? He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once, twice. The familiar sound of his bare feet against the floor felt too loud. Because I don't know, he said finally. Or maybe I do, and I don't want to. That answer landed harder than any confession could have. I took a step toward the hallway. He moved at the same time, blocking my path without even realizing it. Don't, he said. The word came out sharper than he probably meant it to. Don't what? I asked. Go down a hallway in my own apartment. You know what I mean. I did, and that was the problem. The rain outside had turned into a steady roar, the kind that drowns out everything else. The world felt narrowed down to the space between us, to the way Alex's chest rose and fell, to the way my heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I'm tired of feeling like I'm the only one in this room, I said. If there's something you're hiding, just tell me. His eyes searched mine, like he was looking for something to hold on to. What if I tell you and it changes things? It already has, I shot back. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Alex stepped aside. The hallway seemed to breathe as I walked past him. Each step toward his door felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. The door was closed, like always. Normal. Ordinary. My hand hovered over the knob, my reflection faintly visible in the polished metal. Last chance, he said behind me. You don't have to do this. I think I do. I turned the knob. The door creaked open, and the familiar scent of his room, clean laundry and something woody, like the cologne he wore when he went out, washed over me. Nothing looked out of place at first. The bed was neatly made, a book lying face down on the nightstand, his laptop closed on the desk. I felt stupid, paranoid. See, Alex said softly, it's just a room, but my eyes kept moving, drawn to the closet door, slightly ajar. I crossed the room, my pulse in my ears. Inside, his clothes hung in neat rows, jackets lined up like soldiers. On the top shelf, half hidden behind a shoebox, was something that didn't belong. A small, black notebook. I reached for it, my fingers brushing the edge. The cover was worn, the corners bent like it had been opened and closed 100 times. I turned to look at Alex. His face had gone pale. Don't, he said again, but this time it sounded like a plea. I opened it anyway. The first page was filled with handwriting. His handwriting. Messy, slanted, unmistakable. I didn't expect to see him again. Not like this. Not here. My breath caught. The pages were dated. Last summer. I flipped through them, my hands shaking, reading fragments of nights and places and moments that felt too close to things I remembered but had never connected. We talked until the bar closed. I told him my name. He told me his. I almost kissed him. I should have. The room felt like it was tilting. I looked up at Alex. This is about me, isn't it? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Memory slammed into me, sudden and vivid. A bar in a different city. Music too loud, lights too bright. A guy with the same eyes, the same crooked smile. A conversation that had felt important in a way I hadn't understood at the time. A moment on the sidewalk outside, standing too close, not quite touching. I'd left the next morning. I'd told myself it was just a night. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, my voice breaking. Alex laughed softly, a sound with no humor in it. What was I supposed to say? Hey, Remember that guy you almost kissed last summer? Surprise, he's your roommate now. You recognized me, I said. From the start. Yeah, and you didn't think I deserved to know. I thought. He stopped, rubbed his face. I thought if I didn't say it, it would stop being real. The words in the notebook blurred as my eyes filled. So you just let me live here, let me get to know you, let me, I cut myself off, my chest tight. Let you what? He asked quietly. I didn't answer. The space between us felt charged, electric. He took a step closer. I didn't move. I tried to forget that night, he said. Tried to tell myself it didn't mean anything. But then you walked into my life, and suddenly everything I'd buried was right there in front of me. My heart pounded. You could have told me. I was scared. Of what? Of this, he said, gesturing between us. Of how I feel when you look at me like that. Of how I've felt every time you walk into a room. The room seemed too small, the air too thin. I dropped the notebook onto the bed. You don't get to decide what I can handle. I know, he said. And I'm sorry. We stood there, so close now I could feel the warmth of him, smell the faint trace of his cologne. My mind was a storm of anger and confusion and something else I didn't want to name. Did you send the notes? I asked suddenly. What? No. I swear. Then who did? He shook his head. I don't know. Maybe someone from that night. Someone who saw us. The idea made my skin crawl. Another memory surfaced, uninvited. A figure at the end of the bar, watching. A face I hadn't recognized. My phone buzzed in my pocket, like it was alive. I didn't have to look to know what it was. Alex did. Don't, he said, but there was no force behind it now. Just exhaustion. I pulled the phone out. Now you know. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I looked at Alex, at the boy I'd almost kissed in a different life, at the man who had been sharing my kitchen, my couch, my mornings. What do you want from me? I asked him. He hesitated, then said, the truth. About what? About whether that night meant something to you, too. My breath hitched. I thought about the way his presence had wormed its way into my routine, into my thoughts. About the way my chest tightened when he smiled, when he said my name. I don't know, I admitted. He nodded, like he'd expected that. Neither do I. The rain outside thundered, the sound filling the space where neither of us knew what to say. My phone buzzed again. Tick-tock. I turned it face down, my hands shaking. We stood there, on the edge of something neither of us had planned, neither of us could ignore. And for the first time since that night last summer, I wondered if walking away would be harder than staying. The rain softened into a whisper by the time we left his room, like the storm itself was holding its breath. The notebook stayed on the bed, open to a page neither of us wanted to look at again. I felt its presence even with my back turned, like a secret still watching us from the shadows. We moved through the apartment without speaking. The kitchen light hummed overhead, too bright, too ordinary for what had just been uncovered. Alex leaned against the counter, arms crossed, staring at a spot on the floor like it held the answers we couldn't say out loud. I poured myself a glass of water, my hands unsteady. The sound of it filling the glass felt too loud, too final. When I took a sip, I barely tasted it. I didn't plan any of this, Alex said quietly. I know, I replied. But that doesn't make it easier. Silence wrapped around us again, thick and heavy. I studied the small things instead, the way a drop of water slid down the side of my glass, the faint crack in the tile near his foot, the way his fingers kept flexing like he was trying to shake off a feeling he couldn't name. I keep thinking about that night, I admitted. About how I walked away like it was nothing. Alex's jaw tightened. It wasn't nothing to me. The words landed between us, fragile and sharp all at once. I didn't know what to do with them. I moved to the window, resting my forehead against the cool glass. Outside, the street was washed clean, lights reflecting in the puddles like broken stars. I wondered how many other people were out there, living their own complicated stories, unaware of the quiet chaos unfolding in our small apartment. You could leave, Alex said behind me. I turned. Is that what you want? He hesitated. I don't know what I want. I just know this is hard. I laughed softly, a sound that didn't carry much humor. That makes two of us. He took a step toward me, then stopped, like an invisible line had been drawn between us. The space felt charged, but fragile, like one wrong move could shatter everything. "Do you ever wish you could go back?" he asked. "To before you knew." I thought about the note, the messages, the notebook. About the way my life had tilted on its axis in the span of a day. "Sometimes," I said, "but then I think about how empty that felt, too." His eyes flicked up to mine, searching. We stood there, the city's distant sounds drifting in through the window, the hum of a car passing, the muffled laughter of someone down the street. Normal life, continuing on without us. My phone buzzed in my pocket again. I didn't pull it out. I didn't have to. I could feel the weight of it, the promise of more questions, more pressure. "Alex noticed. They still texting you?" "Yeah. Do you want to know who it is?" I considered the question. Really considered it. "I'm not sure," I said. "Part of me thinks it doesn't matter anymore." He nodded slowly. Maybe it never did. I walked back to the couch, sitting at the far end like I'd done 1,000 times before. Alex took the other end, the familiar distance between us now loaded with things we couldn't say. We watched the rain through the window, neither of us really seeing it. "I don't know what happens next," I said. "Me neither." I thought about the boy from last summer, about the man sitting across from me now. About the way two versions of the same person could exist in my head at once, tangled and inseparable. The phone buzzed again, insistent. This time, Alex reached over and flipped it face down on the table between us. "Whatever it is," he said, "we'll deal with it later." I looked at him, surprised. "Together?" I asked. He met my eyes. "If you want." The word hung in the air, heavy with possibility. I didn't answer right away. I didn't know if I could. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The world felt unnaturally still, like the pause before something big and unavoidable. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to my own heartbeat. Somewhere between what we were and what we might become, there was a choice waiting to be made. And I wasn't ready to make it. The days that followed felt like we were living in the echo of a moment neither of us could name. We moved through the apartment like ghosts, careful not to brush against each other, careful not to say too much. Mornings were quieter now, no easy jokes over coffee, no shared glances across the counter. Just the soft clink of a mug against the sink, the low hum of the fridge, the rain starting and stopping outside like it couldn't make up its mind. Alex started leaving earlier. I noticed the empty space where his shoes usually sat by the door, the way his room stayed closed longer than it used to. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I liked the quiet. I didn't. One night, I found him on the fire escape, sitting with his knees pulled to his chest, the city lights flickering across his face. He didn't look surprised to see me. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. He shook his head. "Too many thoughts." I leaned against the doorframe, the cool air wrapping around me. We didn't talk. We just listened to the distant sounds of traffic, of someone's music drifting up from the street, of life continuing without asking our permission. "I keep thinking about what you said," he murmured. "About emptiness." I swallowed. And I think I've been empty for a long time." The words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to say something, anything, that might bridge the space between us. But the right words felt just out of reach. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a familiar, unwelcome reminder. Alex glanced at it. "You ever going to answer them?" "Maybe I already did," I said, though I wasn't sure what I meant. He studied me, his expression softening. "You don't have to figure this out alone." I met his eyes. "What if I don't know how to figure it out at all?" He smiled faintly. "Then we're in the same place." For a moment, it felt like the world narrowed down to just us, to the shared silence, to the unspoken things hanging between every breath. He shifted, like he might say something else, like he might close the distance. He didn't. The phone buzzed again, louder this time, insistent. I pulled it out, my heart racing. A new message glowed on the screen. "Some secrets don't stay buried forever. You can't pretend you didn't feel it. Neither can he." I looked up at Alex, at the way the city's light caught in his eyes, at the familiar and unfamiliar shape of him all at once. "Do you think people can really start over?" I asked. He thought about it. I think they can try. The message on my phone faded as the screen went dark. I didn't know who was watching, who was waiting for my next move. I didn't know what Alex would say if I stepped closer, or what I would do if he did. The night stretched out before us, full of questions with no easy answers. And somewhere between the rain-soaked streets below and the quiet fire escape above, I realized the real cliffhanger wasn't the stranger on my phone. It was us. The first thing I noticed that morning was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that settles gently over a room like a blanket. This silence felt sharp, like something had been cut away and left behind an empty space where sound used to live. Even the city outside our apartment seemed to be holding its breath. The sky hung low and gray, clouds pressed together like they were whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. I lay in bed, staring at the crack in the ceiling that ran like a thin scar above me. I'd traced it 100 times before, usually while waiting for the smell of coffee to drift down the hallway. That was our routine. Alex made coffee. I pretended not to listen for his footsteps. That morning, there was nothing. No kettle, no cabinets, no quiet hum of him moving through the kitchen like he belonged there. I sat up, my chest tightening for reasons I couldn't quite explain. Our apartment was small, the kind of place where you always knew where the other person was. 2 bedrooms, 1 narrow hallway, a living room that felt warmer than it should because the windows caught the afternoon sun just right. It had started to feel like home in a way I hadn't expected. Alex had started to feel like home, too. I shook the thought away and swung my feet onto the cold floor. The wood creaked under my weight, a familiar complaint. The air felt heavier than usual, like the walls were listening. Alex, I called. My voice echoed back at me, empty. I walked down the hallway, passing his door. It was closed. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the faint light glowing from underneath it, like he'd been up all night. I paused, my hand hovering inches from the door, 1,000 questions crowding my mind. I told myself I was overthinking it. I always did that. I went to the kitchen instead. The coffee pot was cold. The mug he always used, the chipped blue one he swore tasted better than the rest, sat in the sink, untouched. The rain outside had just started, soft at first, tapping against the window like a hesitant knock. I leaned against the counter, staring at my reflection in the dark glass. I looked tired, curious, a little too aware of how empty the apartment felt without him moving through it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The sound made me jump. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. Did you sleep well? My stomach dropped. I stared at the words, my reflection staring back at me, both of us looking equally unsettled. My mind raced through possibilities. A wrong number, a joke, something else I didn't want to name. Another buzz. He didn't. I turned toward the hallway, toward Alex's closed door, the thin line of light still glowing beneath it. My heart started to pound, each beat louder than the last. I didn't know who was on the other end of my phone. I didn't know what they wanted. But I had the sudden, unmistakable feeling that whatever was about to unfold between me and my roommate, between the quiet mornings and the unspoken glances, was no longer something I could control. I took a step toward his door. And hesitated.